Welcome to the Cycle 365, recorded on June 22nd, 2020. This is episode 38, and I am one of your hosts, Cody Stoffer.
I am Simon Villanos.
And I'm Jesse Newton.
And today we have a special guest. This is Liam Hughes, who's also a avid fan, and we're going to definitely get his opinion on one of our upcoming segments. Liam, would you like to introduce yourself by what we do here? Kind of a tradition is, what is your favorite sports memory, whether you watched it or participated in it, and why, and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hey, my name is Liam Hughes. My favorite sports memory is watching the 2015 Super Bowl, watching the moment before Von Miller strip sacked Cam Newton, and just the way the camera panned to him, and you could see death in his eyes, and you know that he was ready to kill. And then the next play happened, and strip sack, and that was the game essentially.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And we're very excited to have Liam with us here today, and bringing another point of view. So our first topic for today is going to be on the discussion on if sports should come back. If you don't know, there have been a ton of confirmed coronavirus tests amongst college universities as well as professional teams, and as well as just a spike in cases overall in the country, especially in states that have reopened. What are your guys' thoughts? We'll start with Liam because you're new to the show. What are your thoughts on this recent uptick in cases and how it impacts sports?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting and potentially, obviously, not good for the future of sports, especially college sports in general. I would say that I'm of the mind that we should be bringing back professional sports. I think we can find a way to make that work out pretty well. College sports, on the other hand, might have to suffer and take the back seat in this one.
That's an interesting train of thought, and I'm gonna turn it over to Jesse here, being that he is a college football coach. What are your thoughts on that? And then if you guys just kind of want to discuss why you think that, Liam.
I was going to say, yeah, as a football coach, I have the insider on. We are going to have a season. We're going to play almost every single game we had with fans, I believe. So I think whether or not, I think we should have it or not, have sports back or not. I just wanted to say, it's going to happen. I think most college sports are going to come back, which is good. I'm happy for it. I think sports should come back, obviously.
Yeah, I'm pretty of the mind that if we're going to do it, if we're going to bring back one sport, we have to bring back all of them. You can't just cherry pick and say, okay, well, the NFL can come back, but we're not going to bring back hockey or NBA or anything like that. So good to know that we are having a college season. Maybe it's not the best choice for the nation, and that's where we'll see in the future, leading up in the years to come, whether or not that was the best choice. But it will be interesting for the very least.
Mind if I chime in?
No, go ahead.
Go for it.
All right, so I kind of agree with Liam about professional sports coming back, and maybe putting a pause on college sports, just because with college sports, look, let's just be honest here. I really don't feel like that most universities are probably doing the best they can to prevent coronavirus, to do testing. If I'm being straight up, I feel like there are definitely some universities who will, stop the frequency of testing, which will eventually make it look like that there isn't anybody, that tested positive. So there's that. I don't know. I just don't trust colleges to be super honest, I guess. At least all of them. And I know some of them can't because they don't have the financial,
like the stability.
Yeah, the financial stability to implement some of these things. And we don't know the long-term effects of the coronavirus. It could honestly at this point literally be anything, because it's only been out this year pretty much. So there's that, and that's kind of a scary thing to think about. Professional sports, on the other hand, the thing about them is that they have the money to basically put in any measure they want and do it consistently. And I know that because we've seen plans like the NBA I guess the MLB has had some plans, but not really. So specifically just the NBA, who have some pretty good measures in place that are meant to, protect the players, not only in, the short term, but in the long run as well, So, yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I want sports to come back. I think everyone wants sports to come back. But realistically, I do think eventually it might get to the point where there might be maybe a little bit too many cases coming out to actually justify sports coming back, especially for colleges. No, like I said, for pro sports leagues who could afford it, I think they could get away with it because they got money to do that. For college sports, at least, honestly, even high school, middle school sports, I'll go as far as that. That might have to be on pause for maybe at least a year. Or, maybe they might just postpone the season too, which would be fine as well, I believe.
See, I don't think I'm of the thought that only pro or only college should come back. And I think as far as like urgency goes, I think that delaying seasons impacts collegiate sports more so because you have those scholarships that are 4-year scholarships. You have those walk-ons that just earned a scholarship. You have a certain amount of scholarships to give per year. And you have 4 different levels of classmen as well as grad students. Like there's more urgency with student athletes than there are for professional athletes, and as far as like a cost benefit thing goes, like ethically speaking, the professional athletes can afford to not play more than the student athletes can, and then it gets into a bunch of fine print stuff where, you didn't play this many games, but you still got your tuition. So you actually have to pay this. And, I feel like there's just not a lot of preparation. So if one of the two, if it comes down to like a coin toss, I guess, of one of the two coming back, I think it should be collegiate sports because of the position that student athletes are in.
That's a good point, and I think that's a point that definitely needs to be made. I think the with the funding that goes into collegiate sports and sports in general across the entire K through 12 spectrum, there's a big impetus on let's make this happen. Let's make this happen so that we aren't wasting money, right? If we're going to be putting all this money, in my opinion, this extortionate amount of money into sports programs, why should they not be doing anything for an entire year? Why should they not be doing anything for an entire season when that money could be going into the arts, could be going into other programs that could be doing something this year? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, and another thing is just like especially with football on the horizon, right? It's a prime example because NCAA football is one of the biggest drivers of revenue for the NCAA and college athletics, period, with all the TV deals that they have and the sponsorships and so on and so forth, right? So if the NCAA also already experienced a huge loss with March Madness being canceled, right? And if college football is canceled, there's going to be a lot of money that's usually there that's not there, and that impacts more than just student athletes. It impacts all athletes and the entire economy, really.
Okay, so real quick, what was the original question again? Because I do agree that if any sport should come back, it should probably be college sports. But
ethically, of course.
Ethically, it should be college sports. Realistically, though, I really only think that pro sports leagues, even the minor leagues, if I'm being honest, but like the main, pro sports, major sports leagues are the only ones that could make it happen and come back because they do have that money. And honestly, even if players do sit, like there's always going to be, more players that could replace them, which isn't that big of a deal. So, but anyways, what was the original question that you asked, Cody?
The original question is, should sports come back? And we got a little off topic just talking about, pro versus collegiate and the repercussions of that. But overall, should sports come back is the question.
Do any of y'all want to get a start on answering that? I mean,
I
could go.
You asked for the repeat, so you can go ahead and take a stab at it.
This is tough. I'm just gonna go ahead and say yes. Like that's a pretty cautionary yes, I would say. Because the cons to sports coming back, obviously for college athletes, I mean that means a lot because we're talking scholarships, we're talking pro opportunities. We could go down a level to high school, even middle school, if I'm being honest. I mean that's a whole year of development. Like if sports doesn't come back, that kids are losing, and that will affect how kids play coming back. That could honestly make even some sports a little bit more dangerous. Like imagine some football teams not being able to hit for almost 2 years, and then you go back to football practice trying to go at full speed. Like come on now. Let's be real, that's not a great recipe to think about. But then on the other hand, you got medically, what happens if the whole team gets infected? And here's the thing about the coronavirus, you could definitely get infected more than once. Like it's not one of those things where you get infected and then you kind of just get used to it so your body could fight it. Is that right?
Yeah, there's been cases of reinfection, and recovery cases aren't always just like cut and dry. It's like there's full recoveries and then there's just recoveries, and that could have long-term damage on lungs and such.
The thing is, almost always the second time you get infected, it's much worse and way harder to fight than the first time. That's the part that scares me, because that doesn't only affect long term, that could affect short term. And you never know if sports does come back. There's definitely a possibility that it increases the chances that this thing mutates and goes for the worse. There's a chance, but I'm gonna say cautiously yes. What about y'all?
Oh, you're good. I would also say cautiously yes, personally.
Well, why?
Well, obviously cautious because who wants to risk potentially lifetime lung damage for one more year of high school football?
Right.
That's a question that needs to be asked, and a question that a lot of high schoolers might not have the maturity to ask themselves. But there's always dangers, and there's always issues with contact sports like football. Is 2 more concussions in another year worth 1 more year of high school football to not play in college and in the NFL?
Yeah, sure.
So I think that those are questions that need to be asked, but I do think that we can attempt it from an ethical and correct standpoint that makes it possible. So I think we should.
I think sports should come back. Obviously, I just think sports should come back, but I'm not going to play that game. I'll let you guys talk enough about it, so I'm just going to say, coming from a coaching perspective, I know that sports are going to come back at pretty much all levels, because I've been talking to the high school kids, and they're all starting as well. So, I mean, whether we want it or not, it's all coming back, I think.
That's a good point, and we'll swing it to Cody on his opinion.
You guys bring up the points that it has to be cautious and we have to be careful, but and don't get me wrong, from a sports fan perspective, I want sports to come back. However, if I look at other countries and their approach to reopening sports, they did not do so until their countries started to have the coronavirus under control, right? And it's not under control here in the United States. It's pretty cut and dry, I think. We can see that we are continuing to escalate in number of cases, and we're just now getting like appropriate testing for it, So that doesn't even include like the very beginning of it as much. And we also have the most amount of deaths from coronavirus in the entire world because of our attempt to try and keep things running business as usual, quote unquote. And I think that honestly, we need to put a halt on everything until this is actually under control. We only stayed inside for 1 month, and masks aren't enforced that much, if at all. Social distancing is not enforced that much, or if at all. And I feel like we can see that in the death tolls and the cases continuing to rise. And I think that if we try and reopen sports, especially as Jesse mentioned, if they're going to have fans in the stands, I feel like that's a really bad idea. So I think that sports, I'm not saying to cancel sports for this upcoming season. I'm saying that we need to put them on pause or suspend them until we as a country have it under control, and that the government is responsible for, taking care of those that aren't going to be taken care of, such as student athletes and the likes of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I could definitely get on board with that. I agree. I don't know. Like, the thing is, this is gonna sound, I guess it's not that controversial. Honestly, I'm just not confident in the government's ability to get this thing together at all. If I'm being honest, I think everything's kind of, I don't know about everything. But for the most part, a lot of the attitudes, the U.S. government that is taking towards the coronavirus policy-wise and whatnot, it's pretty clear that they don't care, and that they're not gonna make, they're not gonna improve the process, I guess, at all, if we even progress it, So that's my thing. That's where I'm coming from. But no, I kind of do agree that sports should be on pause. Not done forever, obviously, but on pause, and I wouldn't mind that either. But it definitely, you can't, you gotta commit to it fully, so it can't just be like a couple, states not doing it, right? It's gotta be all of them. Okay, my bad. I was talking from more of a high school sports kind of standpoint of that, But yeah, I mean, everyone has to do it, and I don't know if everyone will want to. Unless the government itself, the federal government itself, forces them to, which I don't think they will either.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, and that's why we are where we are and why we're discussing it in the first place. But,
we could go without sports for another. I think we could go without sports for another fall. If it comes down to it and it gets super bad and all these things are coming out, because I don't know if we timestamped it, but we're recording this as of June 22nd, 2020.
Wow, no faith in the fact that I definitely timestamped it, bro.
You do this to me all the time too, though. So
yeah, no, I'm just messing with you.
Though. But yeah, I mean, we don't know anything about the long-term effects of coronavirus. As of right now, basically, at least in my opinion, we're still in the first wave because this whole thing hasn't mutated yet. Second wave happens when, stuff gets mutated. So that's the thing that scares me. There's almost pretty positive there's going to be a second wave. I'm pretty sure that there's going to be some sort of mutation that makes this thing much more complicated than it is. Yeah.
I agree. So,
did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think you guys put it pretty well. And I think if I added anything, it'd just be repeating.
Fair enough. That does it for all of our takes on Corona for those who are in the chat. Then we're going to be right back with our next segment and our guest's area of expertise, esports. Is it a sport? Coming up next.
All right, welcome back, everybody. With this upcoming next segment that we're going to be doing, we're going to be talking about esports, whether or not they are, in fact, a sport. And let's just jump right into it. I'll give my own opinion of that, which is yes. Without a doubt, 100% esports are a sport. Anybody want to give their opinion?
I agree.
100%? 100% agree?
Oh, hold up. What do you mean 100%? What other parts are there to this?
Well,
are there some sports that aren't, or games that aren't considered esports, or is that what you meant?
Yeah, there's so the issue and this is one of the issues with esports is that there's a wide range of games, of course. Do you consider online chess an esport as well as, say, Dota or League of Legends or Counter-Strike?
Okay. I'm gonna say games that are a little bit more strategically challenging. are esports, and like chess is still a strategically challenging game, and I know that because I've played it for a really long time. I mean, like, does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
maybe a little with more aspects to it, like not as cut and dry,
Yeah.
That's what I would say for now. That's what I would say for now. We could get into it though.
Cody, do you have an opinion?
I don't think esports are a sport, and I believe that my definition of sport is consistent, and that's where my stance comes from, is my definition of sport, and just like I guess the history of sport as well. Being that I believe that a sport is an athletic competition, and I could not bring myself to call esport players athletes. Just like I couldn't bring myself calling, chess players athletes or something like that.
Okay. And then Jesse, anything?
I'm just kind of in the middle, I'm you guys' advisor. I think definitely they could be, but there's some things that need to go into it in order for it to be a sport.
Okay, fair enough.
Like what?
Well, I mean, me and Cody have talked about how like a sport is vigorous or like physical activity, and I guess in some senses you could have that, but I'm just kind of on the fence. I think I care less about it if it's a sport or not. I just enjoy watching it, so that's what I'll say.
I feel like my stance comes from the idea that there's nothing wrong with there being a difference between something that's a competition and something that's a sport. Like, it doesn't matter to me if it's a competition or a sport, but there is a difference between a competition and a sport. So I'm saying from like an entertainment perspective, right? Like, esports make money. That is undisputable and it is proven. But I wouldn't say that like I said earlier, there's something about sports that screams like athletic to me. But they do have, and Jesse brought it up, we've discussed this in class before, they do have a lot of the other traits that sports do. And that includes things such as a set of rules and guidelines, a governing body, and things like that, as well as like ability to generate revenue. So those are some characteristics that esports definitely have. But to me, I kind of clump esports into the same kind of category as, board games, even, where, there's like an aspect of like strategizing and like reacting as well. Like, I don't think poker is a sport. Just because it's on ESPN doesn't make it a sport, is kind of what I'm trying to say.
Okay, fair enough. So obviously you consider golf to be a sport, right?
Yes.
I think we all would. But would you say that golf is extremely physically taxing in the same way that even baseball is?
I would not say that, but there's, kind of like the same idea that like curling, right? Like, they're sweeping, they're using their arms, but versus like a keyboard doesn't scream like full body to me. Like, even in golf, you're still standing when you're doing things.
Yeah, but would you say that when you yourself play Doom, and we've all seen Cody play Doom, that you're not physically engaging more with the game than you ever do with golf?
Well, I don't really golf, but I'll put that out there. I have other athletic endeavors that I prefer to do, but I'd say that there's definitely like a reactionary part, and like reactions are important in both sport and esports. But there's a difference between like pressing a button and then like lining up a shot for golf, for instance.
See, I'd say it's
go ahead.
Almost the exact same. I mean, that level of hand-eye coordination is so important, and so important with using the mouse, and as opposed to using a keyboard and pressing a button, right? That I would say that they're almost exactly the same. You maybe have to take more into consideration with golf because you're taking into wind, taking into account wind speed and all of that, and how far you're trying to get, and everything that you're trying to do. But I would consider them to be almost exactly the same, personally.
I had something to add on to Liam's statement.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
No, I kind of agree because Cody, you said in golf that you're aiming, right? But like, there are plenty of there are plenty of video games where you're like aiming, like whether it's a gun or even like playing 2K or Madden, and so like it's the same thing. The only difference is that like you're controlling basically a software and AI, but you're still doing the aiming. It's, you know what I mean?
I just think that, well, in golf, you use your whole body, right? Like you don't use like your legs and hips also play a factor into how you can drive a ball, and like footwork is another thing to consider with golf. Like they're more full body things. And, I'll even say something that some may think that's controversial, but in a line and in accordance with, staying consistent, I don't think NASCAR is a sport because, I don't think that it's athletically demanding. And I feel like NASCAR is similar to esports, other than the fact that you're physically like present, but like you don't aim with your feet. Like you step on the brake, you step on the clutch, you step on the gas. Like you're just stepping. That's not footwork,
But you're also like, using a steering wheel, and you got to know angles and whatnot, and you got to time it right. And like it's not something that like a robot could do per se, I feel, because there's also other cars there that are jockeying for positions in NASCAR. And I'm not a NASCAR guy. Like I guess honestly, Formula One, I've heard a lot about that, and I definitely consider that a sport, because that one's a little bit more intense than NASCAR in my opinion, and there's a lot more money put into it so that people could compete, get better. And I feel like honestly, anything where you could compete in could be considered a sport, and that's I don't think I said that before, so I'm just putting that out there.
Are spelling bees a sport?
Yes. Memory. What do you mean? Like, bro, yeah, it's memory. Like, you gotta remember all that stuff, and you gotta keep your composure, and like and there's strategies to it,
Yeah, I would agree. I do think spelling bees fall under the purview of sports, in my opinion, and I think it's not only unhealthy to consider sports to be this only physically demanding thing, whereas esports, or what a lot of people call mind sports, would be this intellectually demanding thing as opposed to physically demanding. I think it's actually toxic to view it that way, because then you get the stereotype of the dumb jock who doesn't know anything, even though he can actually pick apart a defense on the football field like nobody else. You know what I mean? Versus the nerd who isn't able to do 10 jumping jacks when really he can beat anybody in chess. I mean, there's been research done that says that an esports athlete who actually physically takes care of his body, engages in workouts, and engages in healthy eating lifestyles will do better than his opponents who don't. And to that case, a lot of teams, and there's a great history of this in esports, where they call them team houses, where they'll bring a bunch of players from a team together in a house out in the wilderness, out in the mountains. There's a story of Grubby, who was a Warcraft 3 player, going into a mountain in South Korea with 4 other guys, and then being locked up in that mountain for 5 months while they played video games, or a month, or however long they want to do it. And then just practicing and practicing and practicing, and that level of intense dedication and level of intense study and intense work ethic, in my opinion, is what allows it to be a sport. And to that point, a lot of Asian nations are labeling it as sport. China in 2003 labeled esports as sports. Japan and Korea are following suit, and I think that I'm gonna say something that's a little controversial. I think that it's harmful, almost potentially harmful to the Asian nations that we have this stereotype in our head. I think there's a harmful stereotype about Asians that they don't like. They're not good at sports. They're not engaging at sports, and I think
yeah.
And I think that this would help work with that. I think that the StarCraft 2 is the national sport of South Korea. We joke about that, but it kind of really was and is. And so it allows them to form a culture around it. And so to say that esports is not sports is almost coming to a point of disrespect now, where they're saying, yes, it is. This is our culture. We take this as a sport. We treat it with all the respect that any other sport would have. And we just go, nah, you're not getting your whole body into it, you freaking nerds.
Well, I'm not gonna lie. That's okay. As someone who is actually Asian and know people, not just in the Philippines, but in Asian nations who like competitive gamers, that's kind of facts. There are obviously places in Asia where like what are they called, like gaming cafes, basically, where you could just game, and do your thing and compete and make money off of it and all that stuff. And and there's leagues for it too, which my opinion kind of justifies the fact that it is a sport, because there are leagues. Because I'm trying to think of like leagues where like, I don't know, where like do something competitively and it's not considered a sport. And I don't know, I'm kind of blinking out, I'm not gonna lie. But what were you gonna say, Cody?
I was just gonna say none of us here have used the word nerd other than Liam to describe esport athletes, so I'm just gonna put that out there, I'm not trying to be condescending. And I even clarified earlier that there's nothing wrong with being in something that's competitive. At that rate, we talk about the dedication and, eating better and being healthier helps you be better at what you do. That's the same for any job, right? Because if you're a doctor at a top hospital, there's incentives to be better than the other doctors. There's incentives to being healthier, so that you can perform better at your job, right? And there's competition within the hospitals and with other doctors across the nation. And there's a lot of time dedicated to it. You have to go to school for basically a decade before you're allowed to be a doctor. But I wouldn't call them athletes or being a doctor a sport.
Well, but they're not competing against each other, like, recreationally, I would say. Like, yeah, there's honestly, depending on who you are, there's natural competition. Depending on where you are, there's natural competition, like, in any setting. But, like, I think there's a difference between, being recreationally competitive, as in, like, you're in a league, actively training for it, trying to get better, stuff like that, than, just being like, well, hey, I want to be competitive so I could get paid better than this other person. But other than that, I'm not really competing, other than that, just to get paid more. Like, there's no winning in competition, in that kind of competition, really.
Right. That's understandable. I want to talk about the importance of recognizing it as a sport, it's a big deal. Whether or not you think it is a sport or not, kind of doesn't matter to me in that sense, because recognition of it as a sport offers so much to esports, whether you call them pro gamers, professional gamers, or esports athletes. It can offer a lot of things to them. Esports athletes now, because of the beginning recognition, are able to get P-1A visas, which is a category designated for internationally recognized athletes. This allows them to travel to other countries, allows them to essentially compete in other nations and be recognized as what they are. And that it also allows for recognition for esports related injuries. You might laugh and say, well, what are there other than carpal tunnel? Carpal tunnel obviously being the most important one, but there are esports related injuries. They're not quite as impactful sometimes as, say, a torn ACL, and sometimes but they are there, and they are important to get insurance for and to get covered and be recognized. So that would be my main issue with it not being recognized as a sport, is that you essentially take away a lot of the things that athletes are able to get because of that.
Those are very valid logistical points, and while I can't point out other injuries, I'm kind of drawing a blank, but an injury to an esport athlete, especially if it's happening outside of the realm of sport, like if their hand gets broken in like a car accident or something, then their career is probably over. Right. So from that standpoint, I can see where you're going and the pros to it and the benefits to calling it a sport. However, I just think from my definition and from the expectations I hold of sports versus competitions, that there's just not the athleticism to warrant it. And I think that can be addressed in other ways. I mean, they have governing bodies, right? There are leagues, and they're responsible for, a lot of the money comes from sponsorships, right? And from promotions and the marketing of it. So especially in this online age, right, where, marketing online is the best way to reach a lot of people, especially people our age. And there's ways for the governing body to ensure their athletes, like as a union of sorts. So I don't think by not being called a sport, they're exclusively denied that.
Sure, but I think that I don't know too much about this. I'm not too in depth about that level of knowing the logistics of things. But I have to imagine that 2013 was the first time a Canadian was able to get an American P1A visa to be recognized as an international athlete for League of Legends. I can't imagine that up until 2013, people in America were going, nah, we're not going to recognize it. It's not a real sport. It's not real, essentially. Or, but can't you just apply for a different visa that does the same thing, or that does a similar thing? You know what I mean?
I mean, they definitely could, as far as like a work visa goes.
Sure.
Because it is a job, it's a full-time job, especially at the level that they play at. But there are definitely, I think that the sport aspect just makes it easier, but it just doesn't, doesn't fit like the same way that it is with other sports.
I understand where you're coming at that from the physical aspect, but I think that if you're going to treat these people with the respect of the competition and with the respect of their needs in regards to logistics, I think that it would be unbecoming to treat them as like a separate but equal thing. You know what I mean? Where it's like esports, well, they're their own thing, and yes, we do everything for them that we do for sports, but no, we can't just lump it all together. It's like, well, why not? Why can't we just lump it all together? Is the semantics of the word really that important? You know what I mean?
Well, just from the question, are esports a sport?
Right.
Then no. That's the question being asked. Is,
right.
Are esports a sport?
Right.
That's it. It doesn't. This question is about semantics.
Fair enough. And that's another reason why I would consider them a sport, because they have similar needs in that regard, and they have similar desires in that regard as far as the competition that they're trying to get done. Simon, any input?
No,
Busy
yeah, I
getting
mean,
finals MVP.
I know. I just sent Cody a snap as I just swept the Clippers in my player mode, So GOAT status. It was my rookie year. Finals MVP. Averaged like 40 points a game.
Wow, I can't believe
Either
you
way.
got set on rookie.
I don't know if you could actually prove that, but you can't. So there you go. Anyways, on that note, yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. Like, it is kind of unfair to give esports. I don't know why. I just thought of a meme. I'll bring it up later, but it is kind of unfair to basically give esports all the classifications and I guess some of the perks of a regular sport and then not call it an actual sport. You know what I mean? The meme real quick that I was thinking about was when, Anakin from Star Wars got onto the Jedi Council but was not given the rank of master. That's what I was thinking. Because, hey, man, like, look, I mean, we're talking strategy-wise. Like, there's a lot of thinking that has to go into esports, right? And that, it depends. It varies, from sport to sport or from game to game, I would say for sure. Just like in normal sports, how, it varies the skill set you need from sport to sport. So there you go. When it comes to, visas, funding, scholarships, all that stuff, I mean, it basically gets the same stuff that regular sports gets. So I don't know. And then going back to my original argument, like something that you could do competitively, like actually win at, you know what I mean? Like you could be in a league and do this competitively. Because I'm pretty sure like most sports, like you got to be in a league got to be able to compete, obviously, because if you can't compete, then there's no winners or losers. So that's, in my opinion, that's what, that's what a sport is. And I'll backtrack a little bit about my chess argument there. I would consider it a sport, because it's still a strategy and whatnot. Like I said, it's just different skill sets.
I don't know if you guys touched on this, but I mean, when I said physical, like me and Cody said physical, like vigorous physical activity earlier, it can mean on the brain. Like I think, yeah, like the brain is a physical thing too. So I mean, it may not be physical like on the body muscles, but the brain could be physically taxed too. And I think that could go like be an argument for it being a sport.
Yeah, that's very fair. Yeah. And to go further with this, I think one thing that is maybe going to give Cody some pause going into the future is VR and VR video games and VR esports, which maybe would help bridge the gap between regular sports and regular esports. Now at this point, where you say, okay, here's a list of 5 VR players, and they're going to play Madden online. And they're gonna run around, they're gonna move, and they're gonna control their characters physically. It's just gonna be Madden.
Yeah,
I was
on.
Well, I was just gonna say I was kind of thinking about that when Jesse was like, the brain is a muscle too. I mean, there's already some things where you put, like these little diodes on your head, and you can move stuff, right? Just depending on like your brain waves and stuff. So I'm like, well. At what point when you're just like sitting and you just think would something still be a sport, right? Like if there was like a league of like football where, just to go 50 years past where Liam is talking about, maybe 100 years past where Liam is talking about, right? Where, it's not necessarily like football is overtaken by the best thinkers and the fastest reactors. Does that, like, would football still be a sport, or I guess they'd call it like brain football or something, brain ball, maybe that's a good name. And it's, just people like just thinking, and it's playing out on like a virtual playing field, like where that would fall, Yeah.
And that's the thing about esports is that it's a growing field Nobody knows what the cap for it is. Obviously, the biggest issue is getting women involved, but that's always been a big issue with sports in general.
Yeah, that's a problem. At that rate, they're all sports, because that's just a problem. Period.
Yeah, I think esports has even lower female viewership than regular sports does. So that's definitely an issue that we got to figure out. But esports is less. There's been less discovered about it, and less. There's more room to grow potentially than with regular sports at this point. So we'll see going into the future.
Yeah. So, Liam or Simon, you were about to say something.
The question is, will the Cycle 365 cover esports in the future? We do technically already have an article on, I want to say it was a League of Legends match. It's on our website at the Cycle 365 if you haven't checked that out yet. So, it's my only question.
Well, I mean, if physical sports are put off and it comes to that, I'm just going to have to swallow my pride, won't I? If we need content, we gotta do something for the viewers here, or the listeners.
Cody, you're the one who was saying that, there shouldn't be any sports. Oh, esports you could play at home.
Yeah, this is the time
very COVID friendly. Not in that way, but like COVID environment friendly. I mean, so.
Sorry, I'm laughing at just the way that you clarified. Not in that way, but
I didn't know COVID was in an alliance with esports. Anyways,
Jesse, do you have anything else to say?
No, I think that's good.
All right. So with this segment ending with me backed into a corner, I'm going to have us transition back into a segment that we dropped for. Gosh, it's probably been since 2019 that we last did this, right, fellas? Yeah, so we're going to talk top 5 NFL safeties of all time. Coming up next.
Welcome back to Cycle 365. After our heated debate about esports, we are now going to, like Cody said, our top 5 safeties, NFL safeties of all time. So here we go. I'll go ahead and go first. So at number 1, I have Ed Reed. Plain and simple. I think Ed Reed is the best safety of all time. I think he, is, well, he wasn't the first safety that ever was really good. But I think he just encompasses everything that a safety is, and people before him, obviously there were people before him, but he set the tone for people before him and after him, really. So I think Ed Reed's number 1. I have Ronnie Lott at number 2. I have Troy Polamalu at number 3. Brian Dawkins at number 4. And then, gonna go with the homeboy here, a little biased, but at number 5, Steve Atwater. So that's my 5. What do you guys think?
I think that's a solid list, and you'll be hearing some of those same names with me here in a bit.
Yeah, I know. Simon's probably happy that Troy made it there. He has the luscious locks. So
I was a little surprised. I'm not gonna lie, but I know you and Troy are both on Team Flow. So
yeah, no, I mean, and I want to say that it's like, I know it's, a lot of people say yes or no because it's just the Steelers thing, but. I think Troy Polamalu has some say in what the safety is nowadays. So yeah, that's why I have him at number 3.
That's fair. Okay.
So
all right, Simon, I think that's a good segue for you to go ahead and introduce us to your list, being the Steelers fan, and with Jesse having some Steelers representation. Jesse, don't worry, we'll talk the homeboy some more. So.
Atwater, yeah, I'm sure he'll be in yours, Cody, too. But yeah, and then I'll say my honorable mentions at the end. But
yeah, that's right. Okay. Things first. Look, this was kind of hard to put together. I'm not even about to cap, bro. Like I thought it would be kind of easy because it's safeties, and if I'm just being honest, it's not like there's a whole ton of safeties in the Hall of Fame compared to some other positions. But this is definitely hard, and we're splitting hairs here. But I'll go into my explanations later. I'll just like rattle mine off real quick. But at number 1, I have Ronnie Lott. At number 2, I have Paul Krause. At number 3, I have Ed Reed. At 4, I have Brian Dawkins. And then at 5, just barely, I have Troy Polamalu. So, yeah.
I was just going to say pretty modern other than the Paul Krause entry.
Yeah, pretty much. And if y'all want to just go ahead and say y'all's list, and then we could just talk it through, like 1 or 5 down to 1, then we could do that.
All right. Liam, do you want to go next?
No, you go ahead.
All right, sweet. What a gentleman. So at number 1, I have Ed Reed. Number 2, I have Ronnie Lott. Those are names that I'm assuming we'll be hearing on Liam's list as well. At number 3, I have Paul Krause. At number 4, I have Emlyn Tunnel. And at number 5, I have Steve Atwater.
Interesting. All right. You guys are going to hate me for this. Number 1, I think Ronnie Lott. But Ed Reed is close. Ed Reed is really close. So I put Ed Reed at number 2. Number 3, I put Brian Dawkins. I think that's pretty fair. Number 4, here's the one you're gonna hate me for, Steve Atwater. And then number 5, you're gonna hate me for this one as well, John Lynch.
Hey, I see you. I see you right now.
Okay.
I ain't hate at all, but
I don't hate you at all. I don't know. Like, I feel like your list is kind of close to mine, not gonna lie. For maybe 2 spots.
Well,
yeah. I was considering putting Rod Woodson. I think Rod Woodson would be my my number 6, maybe.
Okay. So we were talking about this before. There are a lot of corners who switch to safety like later in their career or whatever, like, Deion Sanders, Charles Woodson, just to name a few. Rod Woodson as well. So I wanted to clarify this, that with safety, we're basically just going with players who played safety for the majority of their career. Woodson, it said that he played cornerback a little bit longer than safety. So that's whenever we get to cornerback, which may or may not be next week, then, he'll probably be there. But no, Rod Woodson, if we were including like everyone, Rod Woodson would probably be up there.
That's fair.
If we just said defensive back, which we talked about doing, then that would obviously, like, Rod Woodson would be up there because he played 2 positions so well. But there's just so many players that you leave out if you just do top 5 defensive backs. I mean, I feel like there's already a ton of safeties that I couldn't squeeze into the top 5. I think I was the only one that didn't have Brian Dawkins, right?
You might have been, yeah.
Jesse, did you have Brian Dawkins?
I did have Brian Dawkins.
Yeah, so I was the only one that didn't have Brian Dawkins, and he's an honorable mention. Like, I didn't forget about him entirely. He's a baller, and he's elite. He's one of the best safeties of all time. But I mean, I looked at a lot of numbers for this. Like, if you guys saw my whiteboard right now, it kind of looks like an absolute nightmare. But I have Paul Krause at 3 and Emlyn Tunnel at 4. Because respectively, they have 81 interceptions, which is the all-time leader, and 79 interceptions with Tunnel. So, just like, and those were during eras where the ball wasn't passed as much. So it's almost like the percentage of passes that they intercepted versus, a guy like Ed Reed, who is my number 1. I do clarify that, but the percentage of chances to have an interception and then to make the interception were way lower, and for those numbers to be as high as they are, it's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. That's why I personally had Paul Krause. I think I had him at number 2, sure, because of those 81 interceptions. I mean, Paul Krause. I also have Paul Krause at number 2. I mean, we'll just get right into it. I have him at number 2 because I feel like he definitely kind of changed the position a little bit. Like, he was one of the first ones to revolutionize a position. Because every position has that one person who revolutionizes it. Whether it's like Johnny Unitas with quarterbacks, or Don Hudson with wide receivers, you know. And I feel like Paul Krause is definitely somebody who helped, you know, do that and was a part of a great Vikings defense.
He's on the back end of the Purple People Eaters. And I think you bring up a great point, Simon, with talking about how it changes like a position, you know, like their responsibilities and revolutionizes it. And that's why Atwater cracks into my top 5, because I don't think you have guys like Troy Polamalu or Rodney Harrison was another guy I left off this list, where they're able to play up in the box and basically be a linebacker a lot of the time. If you don't have Steve Atwater, who has, you know, generations of kids growing up being like, yeah, I want to play safety because you get a 10-yard head start before you hit somebody. Like, so that's why Atwater was so important to me and why I got him here at 5. Jesse, what was your reason for having Atwater? And then we could probably jump over to Liam too.
I had him at number 5 because, well, obviously he was, you know, I would say you could kind of say he invented the big hitting safety, you know. Plus he's a Bronco guy.
Yeah, that's fair too.
But that's really all I got.
Yeah, I would say a pretty similar thing. I think, you know, talking about Rod Woodson, you know, talking about safeties that can play cornerback, Atwater was a safety who could play linebacker. And if he did play linebacker, would still probably be a Hall of Fame linebacker. You know what I mean? So he's one of those guys who of course he didn't play linebacker, but they still played him almost like he was a linebacker, regardless of that fact. So that was him and those defenses helping carry John Elway for so many years up until we really got clicking on the offense. That means a lot in consistency, and he's somebody who played almost his entire career, all but 1 year, with one team. That also means a lot for me. I know there's plenty of great safeties out there who played for multiple teams, but that adds something to me when a team is willing to go out of its way to make you their guy for forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, forever do be kind of a long time.
Yeah.
Not wrong.
And
Am I the only one? Oh, sorry, go on.
I don't see interceptions as being the end all be all of safety stats. I think tackles are more important personally.
Ooh.
Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. I feel like at safety, you know, you kind of gotta do it all. You know, interceptions are important, but you know, being the guy that has to clean stuff up, that's very important as well. And I get that. I was gonna ask. I'm the only one who didn't have Atwater on my list, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that says a lot, considering there's 3 Broncos fans in the room and 1 Steelers fan.
What? Don't worry, I represented the Steelers.
But yeah, no, I know that, and I appreciate that. I mean, so I'm just gonna be honest. Like, I really couldn't have made this list without including Troy Polamalu, and that's just a personal reason. For me, you know, and all respect to Steve Atwater, he's somebody who I really wrestled with. Like, I wanted to put him right up there at number 5 or 4 or whatever, but I just couldn't. And that's just because, first off, not just as a person of color, as an Asian American, you know, it means something having, okay, I should say this, as a Filipino, you know, there's a lot of similarities between, you know, Pacific Islanders, that is, and then Asians. And for me, growing up, Troy Polamalu was like the one role model I could look at and be like, hey, that's somebody that's kind of like me and that I could be someday. Because up to this point, like, I mean, I'm just being honest, like, there aren't a lot of, you know, Asians in the Hall of Fame. There aren't a lot of, you know, how should I say this, you know, Islanders, like Samoan, Tongans, like stuff like that in the Hall of Fame. And Troy Polamalu was definitely somebody who culturally, like, kind of opened that door to a degree. And of course, there are guys like, you know, like a Junior Seau, rest in peace, and even Roman Gabriel, who was the first Asian American to play football, by the way. He was a Filipino who played quarterback for the LA Rams back in the day in the 60s or 70s, a long time ago. And I really do feel like that I had Troy over Atwater just because of what he meant culturally to people like me, and so and that's just my bias. It's my top 5 list, so I could do what I want with it. It's just me explaining why I didn't have Atwater on it.
That's fair.
Well, yeah, and it totally makes sense. And as far and I'd say that a lot of mine came down to stats. Steve Atwater had a ton of tackles, and that's why Polamalu didn't make my list, is mainly a statistical reason. But you're right, culturally speaking and revolutionarily speaking, Troy Polamalu is very important to that, and displayed high IQ at all times on the field. And I also want to add on, Troy Polamalu was probably the most fun safety to watch when I was growing up, other than Ed Reed, because he would jump the snap count and sack quarterbacks before they could hand off the ball. And, he lived up to his nickname of the Tasmanian Devil, because he really did fly sideline to sideline. So,
hey, I thought Brian Dawkins was the Tasmanian Devil. No, he was Wolverine. Okay, mind.
Bruh.
Well, bro, they're like the same animal. What do you mean?
You gonna say he was my hero and not even know his nickname?
Oh, I was out, bro.
Yeah, I struggled with Ed Reed personally because, as many people probably know, he never even broke 700 tackles, but he obviously had the most interceptions and was probably the most dangerous defensive back in backfields. Regardless, I mean, his low tackles is because of his high passes defended. 139 passes defended and broken up, and that means quite a bit, obviously. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was gonna say, speaking of Ed Reed, Jesse, were you the other one who had Ed Reed at number 1?
Yeah, I'm at number 1.
So we got 2 here for Team Ed Reed as the best safety of all time, and we have 2 here for Ronnie Lott being the best safety of all time. Jesse, do you want to give your reason for Ed Reed being the best safety of all time?
I think I touched on it a little bit at the beginning, but I think he just basically molded what safeties are, really. Now, and people even that came before him were still compared to him after the fact, obviously. But I think when we're talking about, obviously, stats come into play here and stuff like that. But when we're talking about just best of all time, you want the guy that basically made the position the way it is. And I think that's what Ed Reed did. I think he was a ball hawk, but he also could lay the wood. So, I mean, I think that's when you're looking at safeties now, especially as a coach evaluating players, you're looking for that stereotypical type of safety. And without Ed Reed, that kind of safety. I want to touch on, Paul Krause one more time, because we've talked a lot about him and being, the leader in interceptions. But you know why he's the leader in interceptions, right? Because I'm proud of this. But my boy Gary Quazzo, they play on the same team. And while, yes, it's awesome that he played in the NFL, he threw a lot of interceptions. And so, Gary throwing him interceptions in practice. He was ready for it.
Oh, I don't know if that's a shout out or if that's shade, but I hear you. And
it's a little bit of both. I think it's hilarious.
Okay. Yeah. Liam, do you want to take the lead on the Ronnie Lott is number 1 safety argument?
Yeah. If we're gonna go just straight for stats, right? If that's what we want to do, Ronnie Lott has 1,146 tackles to Ed Reed's 643. Ronnie Lott has 63 interceptions to Ed Reed's 64. Now, Ed Reed doubled Ronnie Lott's interception return yards and has 4 more touchdowns, defensive touchdowns than Ed Reed does, or than Ronnie Lott does. But Ronnie Lott even forced more fumbles and had more fumble recoveries. So if we're just going to go straight off of stats, I think Ronnie is just clearly ahead of the game, for being able to be kind of in the same vein as an Ed Reed and get that many interceptions, maybe not being as dangerous on the return as Ed Reed was, but still at that point being able to, like Jesse said, lay the wood and get 1,146 tackles. That's beyond impressive. That alone qualifies him in my mind as the number one.
Yeah. He also was the first. I mean, because Ronnie Lott is older than Ed Reed, so Ed Reed definitely looked up to Ronnie Lott in a way, And I mean, here I'm going to add this in real quick about Ed Reed. He also had Ray Lewis and what's his name, Suggs, for a really long time. That kind of contributes to the reason why his tackle numbers aren't as high. But if we go to interceptions, then I mean that kind of takes a hit too, because you got two really good linebackers that are, putting on the pressure, like they're covering up their guys or rushing off the edge. So I mean, I'm not gonna lie, with Ronnie Lott, maybe it's just because he's older. I can't think of a lot of other quality Hall of Famers on those 49ers squads, I guess. At least as significant as a Ray Lewis or Terrell Suggs.
Right.
Yeah.
Ray Lewis, as we all know, the tackle leader in the NFL.
Yeah. And you guys bring up a lot of good points, and Ronnie Lott is a dude. Like, it's not with this discussion, it's not like, in my eyes, there's not like a gap, it's neck and neck, with like the difference being like a hair, as far as like how close this is. And I think something that just really does it for me with Ed Reed is just the way he was able to impact all aspects of the game. Like, he's the only player in NFL history with a punt return for a touchdown, a punt block return for a touchdown, a fumble return for a touchdown, an interception return for a touchdown. Like, he was able to score on defense the way that no defender ever has, and I don't know if any defender ever will again. Especially with the rules but being a bit harsher on cornerbacks these days. But he had a nose for the end zone, and I'm pretty sure that he's a couple of touchdowns ahead as far as like pick sixes go, ahead of the next guy. And just the way he was able to play the ball. And you brought up a lot of good points that the teammates matter a lot, but man, he maximized his value for that Ravens team and really left a stamp on it. And obviously growing up with Ed Reed makes it a little bit biased, just because I was like, man, he's literally picking us off all the time. Like, this sucks. But like, just the way that he did it, I think a lot of it is just like, kind of just, a lot of it's like the confidence that you play with. And when Ed Reed stepped on the field, there is no better safety in the game. Like, you knew that watching the game. You knew, don't throw it to Ed Reed. And it's like, well, where is he? He's everywhere, is the honest answer. So, just his nose for finding the end zone. But it's not like a huge gap. And Ronnie Lott obviously has like the championship advantage too, which leads me to one of my shout outs is I want to shout out Willie Wood for the Packers, who won 3 NFL championships and 2 Super Bowls. And he got 48 interceptions, even though he was like blind in one eye. So if you don't know your history, look up Willie Wood. He's a dude.
Okay.
I guess that's a good segue. What are some... we've thrown some names in, but what are some honorable mentions for you guys as far as names that were really hard to leave off the list?
Have we talked about Brian Dawkins at all, though? I'm going to leave him off the list.
I did not talk about Brian Dawkins. That was more of a, it's just really close kind of thing.
Did anybody leave Brian Dawkins off the list?
Just me.
So he's an honorable mention, though, right?
He's number 6. Like,
okay,
right there.
Come not higher.
I just feel like I don't know, because the other guys are better.
Good one. Nice. All right. Welcome to First Take.
I mean, I feel like there's different reasons for all the guys that are ahead of him. One guy that I had was Emlyn Tunnel, and he's in a very similar boat as Paul Krause. They have the same number of Pro Bowls, and he has more championships even, and only 2 less interceptions. So I read into the interception leaderboard quite a bit there as far as putting those guys back to back, and then having Atwater ahead of him comes down to importance of the game. He has one more Pro Bowl, and while it's not really fair to compare championships with the safety position, Atwater was really important to those 2 Super Bowls for the Broncos and appearances leading up to then.
Fair enough. Okay. I'll kick off mine. So one person who was an honorable mention that I haven't mentioned yet was Larry Wilson. He played for the Cardinals back in the day from 1960 to 1972. We're talking about someone who could revolutionize the game. Larry Wilson was definitely one of those guys who made the safety blitz a normal thing, and obvious as well, he ended up with 52 interceptions, which is kind of a lot for a time where not many people threw a lot, as we mentioned back then. And he kind of did his thing back in the day, and he definitely deserves to be on a all-time safety list, just not this top 5 one.
If we made a top 10, this would have been easy, in my opinion. Like, there's just 10 that are above the rest. But that's what we do here at the cycle. We make the hard decisions.
We have to. What about you, Liam? Who's an honorable mention?
Honorable mention for me would be Dennis Smith. He Bronco player. Gets overshadowed by Atwater quite a bit, but kept up with Atwater pretty well with tackles. Had 1,171 tackles to Atwater's 1,180. Atwater, he even had more interceptions than Atwater with 30 to Atwater's 24. And more sacks, 15 to Atwater's 5. So Dennis Smith helping with Atwater on his team just really set the defense apart for those years. And I would still put Atwater higher because I think the impact he's had on the Broncos is bigger. Dennis Smith left he left in 1994. He started playing in 81, so he never got any championships with us. But I think Atwater had the bigger impact on the team at the very least, and did more over less years. So that's why I put Atwater over Dennis Smith. But Dennis Smith's still one of those key Broncos safeties.
Good stuff. Dennis Smith definitely overlooked. Jesse, are you gonna echo Dennis Smith, or you got a different honorable mention ready for us?
No, I got a different honorable mention. I actually have 2. Well, first of all, John Lynch has to make my honorable mention list. I know he wasn't in my top 5, but he has to make the honorable mention list. And then the 2 guys I want to talk about, well, on my honorable mention list is Sean Taylor.
Oh
yeah, great one.
And I want to go with also a more recent guy, just for our listeners. So I'm going to go Cam Chancellor. I think Cam Chancellor could be an honorable mention as well.
Interesting.
I was about to say, what made you choose Cam Chancellor over Earl Thomas?
You guys remember that scene with when Earl Thomas broke his leg?
Him flipping off Seattle.
Okay. Forgot.
So, yeah.
Cam Chancellor hits harder, but he's for the kids.
Uh-huh.
That's fair.
That's not even the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Earl Thomas.
That's true. Especially with the stuff going on now. Why? Like what? All right, never mind. Sorry. I'm gonna chill. I'm out here trying to judge this dude.
Bro, like his life was on the line, bro. Cut him some slack.
What do you mean his life was on the line?
What do you mean? What do I mean? Did you not hear about that?
The incident where his wife pulled a gun on him?
Yeah, bro.
Oh, she wasn't gonna shoot him. She probably wasn't gonna shoot him. I
mean, she didn't, and that's the important thing. But bro, let him be.
Why with your brother, dude? That's just weird, man.
Bro.
That's the problem that Liam has with it. Oh man.
No, me too though. Like don't hold up. Like don't get it twisted. Like that's kind of sus. I'm not gonna lie.
Bro.
It is sus. I'm not lying. It is sus. Anyways,
This just went from the top 5 safeties of all time to an Earl Thomas roast session, and that's why Cam Chancellor's better.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
Tom-
Cam Chancellor did more with less time. To be fair, argue.
hold up. What do you mean more like tackle wise, stat wise, or?
Yeah, I mean, Earl Thomas has been in the league 3 years longer at this point, and he's gotten only 100 more tackles. Earl Thomas 713 tackles. Cam Chancellor, crap, gotta pull it up.
Well, I mean, Earl, they're two different safeties, and that's why they went so well
for
together.
sure. Yeah. No,
I just
mean,
thought with
obviously Earl
Jesse having
Thomas
Ed
30
Reed as the big number 1, that I'd be like, Earl Thomas, he's kind of like Ed Reed too.
He is kind of like Ed
I don't
Reed, too,
know.
except maybe not the greatest guy in the world.
character is key.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Unless you're playing Moneyball, but we're not playing Moneyball.
Okay. Hey, Jesse, you mentioned Sean Taylor. I'm kind of sad that none of us mentioned him before this, and we kind of just forgot about him. Do you want to expand on that?
He was my number 6.
Okay.
Yeah, along the lines of character, since we're just talking about it, he was a good guy, and yeah, I mean he played well in the field, and I think he deserved a shot on it because he was an all-around player, all-around dude.
Yeah, it's really a shame what happened.
Yeah.
No,
I'm also
nobody knows where his career could have gone, the heights that he could have gotten to. You know what I mean? He could have been the best ever. He could have been, or he could have just been great. But the world was his oyster, really.
potential very high.
Yeah.
Bro. I'm not gonna lie, like I can't really imagine Sean Taylor spending his whole career with that Washington team. He definitely would have left for like the Patriots or something, and probably have won them one more Super Bowl than they have now. Anyways,
That would
just
have
throwing that out there. For any team, like he could have went to any team and like maybe give them one more Super Bowl than they have now. So that's throwing that out there.
When your franchise drafts Jason Campbell as their savior, then that spells doom.
Yeah, you dead meat at that point.
I'm also going to give a shout out to Ken Houston, by the way, 12-time Pro Bowler for the Oilers back in the day. Just because of that, and obviously John Lynch is elite. And yeah, I don't have anything else on safeties unless you guys do.
Nope, I'm done.
Big
I'm
shout out to
good.
Landon Collins.
Why?
Landon Collins?
Wait, why?
I'm kidding.
Boy, I think you meant TJ Ward on that 2015 defense, baby.
What? TJ over
Both
Darian?
of y'all meant Minka Fitzpatrick.
What do you mean TJ over Darian, dude? Darian's still more important than that one.
TJ had a lot to do with the swagger that defense had.
Oh, he did for sure, but I think Darian was like that. He was the
He was good, but that's for another day. We'll just make Simon sit on the sideline as you, Jesse, and I just reminisce over the good times.
Yeah, that are already dead.
No, they're not. It's lock and load season. But
Oh, you're right.
if that does it
Oh,
for
hold up. What?
what?
All right, go on. What do you mean lock and load season? That
Whoa, no, that's like what we say. That's like Drew
That's
is
what y'all
locked,
say?
locked and loaded. Like we're locked. Like Locke is the quarterback, and we're loaded because we have receivers.
Yeah, dude. Corton is in session, and Judge Judy is presiding. Bitch.
Yeah.
Y'all beat the Steelers first week too, and we'll see if I take y'all seriously. But,
Well,
Alright.
Ben
Bet.
breaks his arm in half, and Duck Hodges is out there.
could still beat you.
Man.
All right.
Anyways,
All right.
last segment coming up is going to be a fun one.
What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Cycle 365. This is episode 38, and we are on our last segment that we're recording on June 22nd, 2020, by the way. And we're introducing a new segment that was actually Cody's idea, called Good Take, Bad Take, where we reflect and react our own takes back in the day. So I believe this take was episode 1. Is that right, Cody?
Yeah.
Episode 1, that is. And I'm saying Cody because he was the one who made the take. And don't worry, well, we all have made some pretty bad takes. Yeah, but this week it's Cody's turn because it was his idea. So we're going to play that clip now.
See, I think it's funny that you bring that up because I have Michigan as my team to jump into the top 4 because of Urban Meyer's absence. I feel like Urban Meyer, more than, they've had a couple of humps the past few years. They got that punt that got blocked by Michigan State that ruined their season, and they haven't been able to beat Ohio State with all the chips on the table, including the throttling that they experienced last year.
True.
But I feel like this Michigan team is ready to take a step forward, and it's not because of the Michigan team itself, I guess. This team is consistently ranked in the top 20. They find themselves in the top 10, and they're competing for the conference championship basically every year, right?
Yeah.
But they can't get over Ohio State, and I think that the opportunity is now for Michigan to make that leap, to take advantage of Ryan Day being a brand new head coach. I mean, Ryan Day, like you said, he was the offensive coordinator last year, and he was the quarterback's coach back in 2017.
Right.
He's worked with Chip Kelly. He knows how to run an offense, but I want to see what he does with the defensive side of the ball. I mean, he's probably not going to be calling plays for them, but I wonder how that's going to affect like you said, Justin Fields. What does he do with that quarterback, and how will it work in the system? I mean, Justin Fields, I feel like is going to play lights out this year.
Okay.
But when it comes to the championship, will Jim Harbaugh, and his experience be able to overcome the Justin Fields phenomena that is happening at the time? And, what will Michigan be able to do to counter that? And I feel like now is a good time as any for Michigan to make that leap. And if they win, they got a really tough schedule this year. I'm not saying that it's light, but you need a representative from that conference to make it into the top 4, basically, by season's end in the college football playoff. And I feel like now is the time because of Ohio State. I'm not convinced of Ohio State, and I'm not sure what to think of Ryan Day quite yet.
Okay, that's fair.
All right, Cody, since you're the one who made that statement, what do you got to say for yourself? Because I know me and Jesse the following week, if for the OG listeners out there, reacted to it, and Jesse famously called Cody an idiot. So
that I did.
You really did, because I listened to that episode next, and I was like, "Sheesh, man." Well,
what do you got to say for yourself?
Was I wrong?
You weren't wrong, but we all be idiots sometimes with some of the takes that we have, which we'll get to in future Good Take, Bad Take. But if I'm defending myself, forgive me for having faith in Harbaugh. And, I feel like when I think of Harbaugh, I still think of like the fast turnaround that was the 49ers team, right? And, just their, meteoric rise to the top. Also, I know that ignorance isn't an excuse, but I'm way more knowledgeable about college football now than I was last year. Last year, I was like a passive, or before the season started last year, I was like a passive OU fan versus this past year where I actually watched games and got to know players and was more invested mainly for NFL draft purposes because I'm not a huge college guy. I know ignorance isn't an excuse, but it had a role to play in it.
Okay.
So that's me defending myself as far as thinking that Harbaugh could actually make the Wolverines a top 4 team. But, there are some things that I didn't know as much, such as, how bad Shea Patterson was. And those are some things that you guys definitely knew heading into it that I just wasn't as knowledgeable about.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. I mean, look, in your defense, every year, this is just, general. Most college football experts throw in Michigan in there and be like, yeah, this is a team that could they could do something. Like, it's a team that could do something just because Jim Harbaugh's there. And I'm going to say this: I don't think Jim Harbaugh is a bad coach, per se, because we've seen his success. We've seen his success. I don't know how I don't know how you regress as a coach. I'm pretty sure you can't. By that point, it's basically your players. The thing is about Michigan that I personally really didn't know as much until like I've seen the pattern is that it's a tough school to get into. Like academically, it's pretty demanding. I mean, obviously it's not Stanford or Harvard or Yale, but like it's pretty demanding compared to the other Big Ten schools like Ohio State. I don't know why I said Ohio State first, but yeah, Ohio State. That historically may not be as academically prestigious as a University of Michigan. So because of that, it's hard to recruit players that could, well, first off, that are talented, and then second off, that could withstand the academic rigor of University of Michigan, and then still be kind of okay on the football field. So yeah, that's my little defense for you, but. At the same time, I've seen it. Jesse has seen it, obviously, being college football fans over the years. Michigan's downfalls despite having some talent there.
I see it every year.
Never enough.
I see it every year.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's it. I'm just saying. I see it every year, so that's why I knew it wasn't going to happen.
I mean, and right now, I mean, Ohio State is just so good. And they continue to be so good every year, and I that's the biggest hump to me that I've seen for this Michigan team. I'm pretty sure they haven't beat Ohio State since Harbaugh's been coach. I also wasn't sure about the Ohio State coaching staff. If you listen back to that episode, I expressed doubt in the new coaching staff at Ohio State. But whether the coaching staff is the problem or not doesn't matter when you have that much talent, honestly.
I would just say, if you think about it, yeah, they had Justin Fields, who's going to win the Heisman next year, and, they had the number 2 overall pick in Chase Young. So, I mean, you had the 2 best players on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and any inexperience or, any lack of coaching, you can mask that up with 2 of the, I'd say, top 5 players in the country. So.
I was gonna ask real quick, did you want to react to that take 2 since it was in the same episode? We totally can.
Which take?
Doubt about Ohio State's staff.
Oh, well, it's a 2-sided coin, and it's not like a different take. It's just a part of the bad take that was the Michigan take more than anything. But something that I do want to discuss about the Michigan take, and you and I talked about it, Simon, is if Michigan didn't make the college football playoff, what did John Harbaugh's job security look like? And if they didn't finish as a top 10, or what did I say, John?
I said John, yeah.
Jim Harbaugh, my bad. What's the status of Jim Harbaugh's job security? And then there is also a statement thrown around that if they finished outside the top 10, that maybe he should be fired. Simon, you already kind of defended him. Jesse, what are your thoughts on Michigan? They finished 18th, by the way, at 9-4.
I'm going to say I think he should be fired, but he's not going to get fired. Just because it's Jim Harbaugh, and that's who coaches Michigan. It's sad, but that's it.
Do you think Michigan will ever accomplish anything with Harbaugh there?
They could, maybe, but I don't know. There's always going to be a disappointment to me forever and always.
Oh my gosh. Forever.
Hey, Lee, did you have anything you wanted to add on, by the way?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Jesse. I think if he does finish so poorly next year, he should be fired. But he probably won't. I mean, I would have to imagine that he won't. Jim Harbaugh has that gravitas behind him that isn't going to let himself be fired. You know what I mean?
Ooh.
You can't fire me, I
true.
quit.
See, that's true though, because like like realistically, I mean, I said this back then, and I kind of agree with it, but nowadays it's like, hold up, if Jim Harbaugh gets fired, who are you going to replace him with? Who's better than him? Could bring in the same recruits like him? Because let's not get it twisted. Jim Harbaugh has brought in some really good recruits, better than some of the past, University of Michigan coaches. Recruits like a Devin Bush. I'm pretty sure Rashawn Gary. I don't know about Jabril Peppers. I don't think so, right? No?
No, that was the previous staff. I'm almost positive.
Yeah. Jordan Lewis, another cornerback. Even on the offensive side of the ball, you got Nico Collins, Donovan Peoples-Jones, guys like that who have contributed to Michigan. And I'm not going to lie, like, if we look back at the previous Michigan era, it's not the greatest. Like, you can't really list that many, at least as many, talented, successful football players who went on to the NFL and got drafted high and went on to the NFL, So, I don't know, that's just my thing. Like, I don't think that Michigan could hire somebody better than Jim Harbaugh right now.
Jesse, no, that
too radical?
No, and that's a very fair point to make, I think, is that, maybe firing him, even if he does do poorly, isn't the right choice, because who are you going to replace him with? You're still going to replace him with somebody worse. So what's the point in firing him, right? If he's the best you can do with Jesse Bouton. Fair enough. That's the best choice I would agree with.
Jesse Bouton for Michigan head coach.
Yep.
I think we can all agree.
All
on
of
that.
us for Michigan coaching staff.
The Cycle 365 for the Michigan coaching staff, and the Cycle 365 still to purchase the Washington football team. You can go back to that episode. I don't remember which one it is, and contribute to the GoFundMe. We're just trying to raise a couple $2 billion, guys. We're not even asking for that much.
Yes. Well, I'm sure that will be another good take, bad take segment too. When we get to that, but
it's our greatest take. But anyways,
one of our greatest, yeah.
You guys all talked about, the drop off that happens after Harbaugh, and his job security is pretty firm. What would it take for Jim Harbaugh to be fired? Jesse, you talked about it a little bit, that said even if he didn't do good, he wouldn't be fired. How bad would he have to do to lose his job?
I don't think performance has anything to do with it. I think it's the donors and the alumni and the students and faculty that say we need to get him out of here. We want to win football games. I don't think he'll ever get fired as a Michigan coach for playing poorly.
Wow, that's bold. Do you think that's just because of like name value, or?
Absolutely. I think a recruit sees, it's Michigan with Jim Harbaugh, we're going there.
What? Simon, Liam, thoughts?
Go ahead, Simon.
Yeah. Look, I mean, if I'm being honest, it would probably take a pretty significant scandal for him to get fired. I'm just being honest. We give Jim Harbaugh, a bunch of. We're tough on him. We're tough on him. But the thing is, he still has a 47-18 record, which is pretty good. At Michigan. The thing about Jim Harbaugh is that he can't. Like, the famous thing about him is that him and his team can't win the big games. So, like, Ohio State or even Penn State. Penn State's been on the rise, and so it's just like he hasn't done enough to get him fired. Like, the only thing really against him is that he has one bowl win while being at Michigan out of 5 years. Right? Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, out of 5. So that's the only thing. He still has a 47-18 record, which is really good. And I mean, look, you can't fire somebody for winning X amount of games, which is significantly more than the last guy, So I don't know. I really don't think now is the time to roll the dice either, because you got up and coming programs like Minnesota. Ohio State's always going to be there. Penn State's always up and coming. Wisconsin always finds a way to compete. So if Michigan really wants to roll the dice and fire Jim Harbaugh and see what happens, I just think that's more risky than anything, because you're guaranteeing failure. If anything, at least with Harbaugh, you're guaranteeing that you have a chance. because he's somebody who recruits generally well. He's somebody who connects to his players generally well. So I mean, I just think it won't happen unless it's a scandal.
Yeah, that's pretty fair, and I would agree. I think he's overall too good of a coach to be firing unless he's gone like 10 years without a single bowl win, even if he goes to the playoffs every year. At that point, there's something a little bit more systemic about those big game losses than just being able to blame it on bad luck or our opponent is just better than us, right? So I think even if he doesn't do great this year, how many poor seasons do you allow for a coach with that kind of strength? How many poor seasons would we allow a Bill Belichick, right? Would we allow a Bill Belichick a 3-13 season?
We allowed a Coach Collins to win like less than half of his games here, so
yeah, exactly. So
but that's UNC culture.
Right. But you know what I mean? Like, what leeway do we give a great coach, an all-time great coach?
I think he'd have to finish under 500 for
the question that you've
at least consecutive seasons or even multiple seasons.
Right.
Like, yes, they want to compete, but at least they're relevant right now. It like kind of what Simon was saying. Like, I didn't know that his record was 47-18. Like, yeah, that's pretty good, but it's better than CU probably in the past 5 years.
Oh, for sure.
And I mean, I think this is worth bringing up. Recruiting wise, he's very good. Like in the class of 2021, he did finesse. In my opinion, he's the best quarterback in this next high school class. JJ McCarthy, who will be playing. I won't say will be, but assuming sports goes on, he will be playing for IMG Academy. He is a very talented quarterback, and I don't think he'd be the first 5-star guy because they still got the boy Dylan McCaffrey. Loki probably should have started over Shea Patterson, but it is what it is. So I mean, it's just commits like that the past coaching staffs at Michigan just couldn't do. Like they just couldn't do because they're not Jim Harbaugh. And I mean, I think eventually gets to the point where you get tired of him losing the big games, but that might take some time. Like I think for that to happen, I don't want to curse Michigan like this, but if they lose 10 straight bowl games for 10 straight years, then yeah, like sorry, bro, but like that's not gonna work. Like you're fired because by that point, you got some time bias, and then you could just forget about the old era, and then that's how you slip back. In my opinion, I think it would do them good just to keep him. It's just my opinion, because I don't think there's a better coach out there. They have some inside information that we don't, which they might. Jim Harbaugh,
Yeah, and I'm sure that's what they're saying too. It's Jim Harbaugh. Leave him alone. He'll get us there. To have some faith, trust the process, trust the system.
Because they're always in the dance. They're always in the dance. They just can't finish. See, did you have anything to add to that?
Nope. I think you guys covered it.
Okay.
Jesse is pat in his Harbaugh stance.
So I'm just going, we're going to go take for take. Look, we reacted to that take. I mean, obviously, it wasn't a great take. We'll call it a bad take. So there it is. But just to add on to that, here's my take about Jim Harbaugh. If he was at any other college that didn't have as demanding of an academic program, would probably have at least one playoff appearance by now, maybe even one playoff win. Say if Jim Harbaugh was the coach of LSU or UT or Florida State, one of those, or Florida, I think he would, for sure.
All right. Well, we will remember that. And by remember that, I mean we will stumble across this episode when we started doing good take, bad take. And if it ever happens, we will react to it with a good take or bad take.
There you go. So is that it?
Yep.
I think that does it for this week on The Cycle.
Special thanks to our guest Liam. That was awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks for taking time out of your busy day to join us.
Of course. My pleasure.
And hopefully, Liam, we could have you on more because it's always a pleasure to talk to you, get an outside opinion on sports. As always, that's what we do here at the Cycle 365. And as many perspectives as we can. And on that note, make sure you check out our last mini-series episode 4, about discrimination in youth sports, where myself, Nick Garza, Jake Schaefer talk about our personal experiences. I've already gotten a couple messages from a couple people about that episode in a good way, that is. It's very eye-opening. It's very emotionally vulnerable, I would say. And it's our experiences, so it's real. It's real. Make sure you check that out. Make sure you check out all the other ones as well, along with the last one with Jasmine Hughes. Make sure you check out our social media at the Cycle 365 on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, especially Instagram, because we're going to be finishing up y'all's fan fictional football team through polls. That'll be wrapping up either by the end of this week when it gets posted or by next week. So keep an eye out for that. And I am one of your co-hosts, Simon Villanos.
I'm Cody Stauffer.
And I'm Jesse Boone.
Peace. There we go. That's it.